Technology. Oh,
Now
we're back
it
on
says
air.
on air.
We're back.
Okay.
And one more, and Angela joined.
There's Angela. Hi, Angela. How you doing?
Oh, great. Hey.
Well, for our friends who are going to be watching this later on, the technology is kind of working against us, but we're having a great time hanging out with Christine, talking about her book. And just joining us is Angela and Kylie.
Hey.
I got stickers.
Oh, God. All right.
And so, Christine, the book is in bookstores now.
Yes,
And what
it is.
sort of response have you been getting? Have you been hearing from girls? Or?
I've heard from a few girls, lots of parents. People like the book. The girls that I've heard from find it very helpful and actually aren't resistant to any of the exercises, which is good. I wasn't quite sure how they'd be. I tested everything out on my own children. They're my frequent laboratory. So, but a lot of their friends have the book now and really enjoy it. So it's gotten good feedback so far. I'm pretty excited.
Cool. I'll have a couple questions more about the book, but let's open it up to maybe Becky or Angela. Do you have some questions for Christine?
Kylie wants to ask a question.
I love questions from kids.
Okay. My question is, so, what made you want to start writing the book? Like, was there a specific situation, like you saw girls that needed help or guidance that they didn't get any, or was it really like working?
I think it's really hard to be a girl in our culture today. I think there's a lot of pressures to kind of quiet that independent voice, and that kind of breaks my heart because I've always been, growing up, I was always the girl who marched to a beat of a pretty unique drum at a time when that was not cool to do that, and it was rough. My kids march to the beat of a pretty unique drum, only it's kind of cool to be that way now, so they're not having the same kind of impact that I had, but I wanted something that girls could latch onto to really figure out who they are inside and be flexible with that, knowing it's going to change over time, and kind of hone in on that voice despite what the media might be telling them or what their friends might be saying or those kind of outward perceptions of what's cool.
Well, personally, it helped me. Like what you were saying, your kids are, have a unique personality to them, and that's me. But a lot of times, like, I'm afraid to show that to other people just because, like, people are so judgmental. So it definitely did help me a lot, like, in specific situations. So tthem. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I love that.
Kylie, did you do like all the exercises and stuff in the book?
I did all of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my mom was on me about that, but it was actually fun. It wasn't like I had to do work. It was actually fun exercises. It was like creative time. It was time to try.
That was the intent. So good. Well, I'm glad. That thrills me.
Good. You definitely did get on that part.
Yay.
So we kind of went on vacation after we got the book, so we had to take a different approach to reading the book. We kind of read it jointly, and I posed the what would you do questions to Kylie, and then Kylie would respond, and then we'd have a little dialogue about it. And it was kind of like, for me, it was like a checkpoint with her. I could see where she was on her moral compass and her decision making, which was really nice. One thing Sarah and I was talking about last night was with Kylie, I feel like she was right on where she needed to be. It matched the things that you were saying in the book. So the one thing that we struggled with was when you come into contact with the other people that aren't matched with where you are, because I know there's times that she wants to help people and they're not really there. They're not to that place where she can even help them. So can you talk about that at all?
Sure. I think that happens a lot, especially through adolescence. People are on really different stages developmentally for about 4 or 5 years. And so those 4 or 5 years can be huge. Who you are when you're 10 and who you are when you're 16 bears no resemblance to each other. And a 16-year-old remembers what it is to be 10. But a 10-year-old has no concept really of what 16 means, just like 16 has no real concept of what it means to be 25. They will think they do, but they don't really have any frame of reference for it. So I think when something like that happens and you're really mismatched and you've got a friend or somebody that you need to help, who's not quite where you're at, it's important to go back to remembering kind of what it was like when you didn't have a certain skill set or a different ideology, and kind of meet them where they're at and then give advice from there. So if you've got a friend who's making some really bad decisions, for example, and you're looking at it going, dude, how can you tell that those aren't like really lousy decisions? Don't say that, because then they'll never listen to you. But instead, try to get them to tell you why they've made the decisions that they're making. Kind of what's the point of it, and what's the good things that could happen as a result of those decisions, and what are the bad things. So you're kind of coaching them just like the little worksheets do, only you're doing that with another person. And that will help.
And then you give them a copy of the book, right?
And then you give them a copy of the book. Sure, of course. Hello. No, just kidding.
Well, I kind of wondered the same thing, only a little bit more on the level of friendships and relationships with other girls, because as so many of us remember, and I know that the girls we've got with us are probably dealing with this, we have people are on different levels also of kind of how receptive they are to thinking logically and behaving kindly and being mature. And sometimes, I was reading your book and I loved how it helped the girls reading it take responsibility for their reactions to situations and their own behavior. But I just pictured this poor girl who was really working at it, being logical, being mature, but in a group of girls who just weren't at that level or didn't have the interest in taking that kind of approach to the drama that can arise. So what do you say to girls who are kind of stuck in the middle of that drama?
I go back to the hula hoop technique, which is in the book, and the bottom line is this: you don't have any control over anybody else, ever. So if they choose to engage in drama, that's totally fine. They have every right to choose to engage in that drama. You have a choice you have to make. You're either going to participate in that drama, in which case you have no right to complain because you just chose to participate in it, or you can remove yourself from that drama and find other friends who aren't doing drama right then. It's kind of really cut and dry, and a lot of my techniques are really easy, but they're really hard to implement over the long haul in multiple situations. And I think the mistake in any of my 3 books people make at times is thinking that they're super easy, so it's no problem, I'm going to gloss over it, I don't need to practice these skills, I got them down, piece of cake. And then life happens, and it kind of smacks you in the rear, and you go, oh, maybe I didn't have that skill so much. And there are adults who read both this book and 101 Success Secrets for Gifted Kids, myself included. I will go back and read these books, and these books are for kids aged 8 to about 15, and I will go back and read them and go, oh, I so forgot that. I need to do that, as an adult. So I think that they're just skills that you're constantly refining.
Yeah, and I like that, just taking responsibility. If it's going to be that way, then you need to just make the choice if you're going to be there or not.
Yep, a really good friend of mine once said, people have a right to be really annoying. They have that right, so you then have to decide how you feel about that. You'll either participate in it with them or walk away.
That's cool. What else do you guys, any other questions for Christine?
If you could impart your most valuable piece of information to a teen, what would it be?
Ooh, to a teen.
Or me.
Okay,
whichever.
it would. I know. Let me think about this, because I have so much. So I'm like, okay, just one. I think it would probably be figure out that little voice deep down inside and follow it, because it's the one that's right. Always. So there you go. That would be my advice.
Thank you.
But Christine, you said you have a daughter?
I do, 2 of them.
And how do they feel about you with this book? Do you throw that back at them on occasion and they get annoyed with it?
They do, actually, and it's not because I throw it back. That's what's so funny. I'm very conscientious because I'm a developmental psych. I'm really conscientious about when I'm home, I'm mom. I'm not the psychologist. I don't want to be that person. So I'm really conscientious about that. But my teenager, who's getting ready to start her senior year, will rather regularly accuse me of being the psychologist and to stop psychologizing her, as she always says. And anytime I say something she doesn't really want to hear. So they've both been my biggest lessons, because it's a whole lot easier to give advice to somebody who's not your kid. When it comes to your own kid, they, just like you guys experience with your kids, they don't always want to hear you because, you know, you're just mom. What the heck do you know? And since they can't really throw it that way at me because I have books on the subject, so clearly I actually do know something, instead they just say, stop being the psychologist. We want a mom. So,
but that has to be hard, though. That has to be hard.
Pardon? It is hard. Well, I've had to really learn different ways of approaching them, because they're not always as receptive in the same way, and they don't want to hear it. No matter how I say it, they take it as a lecture, and I don't want them to, because that kind of is really anti how I go about stuff. So I have to take a really subtle backdoor approach. Fortunately, both girls actually have the majority of the skills down that I've taught in any of my books, because again, they were my laboratory from birth up. So they grew up before they figured out that they could totally backtalk me and be teenagers and all this, the rest. Before they figured any of that out, when I was just the cool mom, they learned all this stuff. And so they actually have the skills. Now they just, it's a matter of reminding them to actually use them occasionally.
Yeah.
I noticed that in reading the book that some of those are skills that I forget even, and I'm young. So it has to be hard for a teen to go through the book and, I guess, realize that they're not going to be able to get it all the first time.
Yeah. My youngest child probably said it the best. Before the Girl Guide came out, when 101 Success Secrets came out, she was going through a really rocky year at the very end of elementary school, beginning of middle school. And it was related to her giftedness and kind of how intense she is related to that. And I remember her looking at me saying, Mom, your books make it sound so easy, but it's really hard. And I said, I know, but we'll figure it out. We'll get through it.
Oh.
But the books are more like a guideline. They're not like exactly what to do, which I really like, by the way. Can I just say, I really like the fact that it's not like, you didn't base it on like specific rules that you had to do. It wasn't like, do this, and this. Like, you're just able to mold it to yourself. And like,
well, and that was the whole point, because what would be the point in giving a book that's about finding your authentic self if I told you what that was?
Exactly.
Right? Because I don't know. I don't live in your brain, so I don't know. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like that about the book.
Good. I'm glad. Good.
And you said it started off as kind of an anti-bullying book, and we know
that was the original pitch. I mean, like a year and a half ago, that was the original pitch to my publisher was, hey, I do a lot of stuff on bullying. How about I write a bullying book? And they came back and they said, well, the bullying, that market's actually really, really flooded, but we do like these parts of your idea. What else you got? And so I kind of stewed on that for a little while, gave them some more feedback, they gave me some feedback, and this book was kind of born out of that.
Yeah, because I liked how you really encompassed nearly every aspect of what girls are going to experience, you know, from school to their friends to their relationships with their mom and the online behavior. The one thing that's not there, and I probably know why, but I mean, it doesn't talk a lot about boys, and I know that's a big part of it.
It doesn't, but on purpose, because there's actually a lot of books out there that do. There's a lot of books that talk about boys, everything from really dysfunctional, unhealthy relationships to healthy relationships. And I wanted this to really be away from boy, you know, male-female relationships or any kind of romantic relationships of any format, away from any of that. Who are you as an authentic human being on the planet trying to find your way? And I really wanted to kind of keep it really focused on that.
I like that. Because there is so much out there that's, I mean, as a writer, too, it's like, where's the romance in the book? You know, there doesn't have to be a romance in a book.
Well, exactly. There doesn't. And with girls in particular, this is about finding your voice and being strong. And from that place of strength, making a decision what kind of a romantic relationship you might want in your life. Mm-hmm. So I think finding yourself is the first step.
Yeah, and if the girl has, kind of been through your steps and kind of developed that voice, then it'd be easier, I would imagine.
Or at least different. I look at my own teenage daughter. I feel really fortunate because she's not. At her age, I'm actually kind of surprised. At her age, boys are interesting to her. She has an normal, healthy curiosity and interest, but they are not a priority. Nowhere close. They're still in the little bit of annoying stage to her because she's kind of a brainiac. So.
Kylie's, how are you doing with the boy stuff? Is that kind of something that you're interested in yet or not? Or?
Honestly, there's
I love it. Yeah, she bailed. I like that. Caught that.
I'm just trying to get Kylie over here with Becky to talk.
Actually, you know how you do that? The one chapter in that book was the digital technology chapter.
Yep.
This one. That was where we were at. And when it said to track how much time you spend on technology, I just told her she should just write 23 hours down and she'd have it covered.
Yeah, that's pretty common, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not normal.
You are normal. I never said you weren't.
There is such thing as not normal. I mean, normal.
If it makes you feel any better, when I tracked my own, it was really bad. So I went, ooh, a little too much online. Better chill.
I think that was your favorite one.
So the technology age has us all like, we want everything right now.
Yep.
And it's fun.
Yep. It is fun. There's a lot of fun stuff online.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of, it's just addicting. Like, I didn't even
Well, it is addicting, actually. They've done a lot of research on that. It actually is addicting. More so than almost any drug you can get your hands on, so. Gotta watch out.
But there is a good side to it is, my Kylie is normal but unique. She's very outgoing, and she doesn't go with the flow. She is her own person, and so it makes it easy. She's been able to find people to hang out with and talk to online that is more like her.
Absolutely.
A lot of times people aren't that way, and I've encouraged her to be who she is and not worry about what other people think.
That's awesome. That's good for you. Good job, Mom. I talk a lot about the whole digital stuff too. I have another book coming out in October that's called Quiet Kids, and it's a book for parents, and it's about parenting introverted children. And there is a section where we talk about digital technology because it's a great way. It's been one of the best things ever for introverts because it's a way to connect with others without absorbing their energy. And the problem introverts have face-to-face is absorbing their energy. We introverts. I'm actually naturally really introverted. I know that's shocking. I know, but we tend to absorb other people's energy, and then we get prickly and don't want to be around other human beings at all and whatnot.
Yeah,
this book talks about that.
Can you actually talk about that a little bit? Because actually, and you guys even noticed that Kylie's being quiet. Mm-hmm. She is more introverted.
Sure.
And she has, when she's with people she knows, she can be more
different.
External.
Yep.
But she is pretty introverted, and to even get her to if she even being around people for long periods of time, it
makes her feel prickly. Probably she literally feels physically discomfort from it.
Yeah,
it's not that I'm always like that. It's just like now that I've been by myself and I'm homeschooled all the time. I'm so used to being by myself. So
has to do with your brain chemistry too, actually.
Grumpy and stuff like that. I'm taking out of it.
Yep.
Your brain chemistry does that?
Yeah, your temperament is actually something that's hardwired into your brain. So the way your brain functions when you are biologically an introvert is different than the way your brain functions when you are biologically an extrovert. So there's actual physiology that's different.
Wow.
So, when I was little, I was seriously introverted. I didn't like people to talk to me, look at me. I would cry if I had to speak. And now I talk all the time.
but it's not about talking so much, and you do build tolerance. You know, we live in a very extroverted world, so we have to build tolerance for it, whether we like to or not, unless we want to just live online from our house all day, which, you know, there's that. But when it's totally different neural pathways that we use is what it is. And so for that reason, our ability to be around large groups of other people is really different. I mentioned earlier that I'm introverted, and I am, but I'm not shy. When I was young, I was shy and introverted. Shy is a behavior, has to do with the personality behavior. It can be changed over time. Being introverted, however, that's not going to change. That's just who I am. So if I'm around really large groups of people or around online a lot, going to a lot of book signings at work, doing a lot of meetings at work, if I have a lot of that going on with no downtime, I become very grumpy, hard to be around, and I just seek solitude. I have to tune everything out and kind of disappear for a while to reboot. Whereas an extrovert requires social connection. So the extroverted child is the child that comes home from school and wants to talk your ear off all the time and process their whole day orally and relive it and tell you over and over and over about their day.
Do you thrive off of like all the large group interaction for a while, or
I can tolerate it. I enjoy it. I'm online because I enjoy it very much. I have to remember, though, that I can't do it for long periods of time. And when you're online, the threshold is higher, so I can be online a lot more than I can do this much social interaction in person. So I will tend to kind of overstay my welcome online a little bit, and then I'll find myself really crabby and cranky, and I can't figure out why, and then I'll just have to sit back and go, oh, because you've had no downtime. That's probably something with it. But it's just, it has a lot to do with how we're hardwired, and kind of, for an introvert, introverts make relationships just like extroverts do. The difference is an introvert makes fewer relationships, but they tend to be very deep relationships, very intimate relationships. We're very curious, and so we'll ask people all about their lives. We have a deep curiosity about other people. An extrovert is more like a hit and run kind of friendship. So they just want like a ton of friends. You know, they're like the class clown, the one in the middle of the room who just has people flock to them because they just want to be around their energy, because they're super high energy and they're, you know, very vivacious all the time, but they don't necessarily know people deeply. So an extrovert will complain about not having close friendships, where an introvert might complain about not having very many friendships. And it's just two different ways to interact with the world.
And this is a book that comes out in October, right?
Yeah, it's called Quiet Kids.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool.
And it's for parents, and there's huge sections for educators in it. Because we live in a world that's, you know, mostly extroverted, so those of us who are introverts, we're kind of, you know, odd girl out, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of wonder, my daughter is 9, and she's just kind of coming to the age of being ready to think about some of the things in your book. Yeah. And she started reading it and actually had a lot of fun, and then she kind of lost her focus a little bit. But also she is a little hard to keep focused on things like thinking through, that's why I think I want her to try your book and try to keep bringing her back around to it so that she can exercise that muscle of focusing and thinking through. But what recommendations would you have for somebody who's trying to bring a child to your book and kind of help them stay focused if they're not as methodical about kind of writing down and thinking through? Do you know what I mean?
Let them pick one chapter and 1 or 2 exercises and start with that. Mm-hmm. Then wait a little while, week or 2, and then pick something different. Then wait a little while, week or 2, and then pick something different. It really is a book that's designed to be done that way. It could be done, but the person who's real linear, who picks it up, starts on page 1, ends on page 147 or whatever, and is like, cool, loved it, moving on. Or it could be whatever piece that talks to you on that particular moment. And with kids in particular, you want their buy-in. You want them to get something out of it. So it needs to be very self-guided and self-directed.
Do you feel like mom should step back and not be as involved in, you know, kind of helping? I just wonder if, like, for my daughter, if that would keep her, if she knew I was wanted her to do it, or was maybe reading her answers, if that would keep her from.
It could keep her
really
from it.
opening up.
Yeah. I think it's important. I like the conversations that happen between people when they're working through it, between moms and daughters. I love those conversations, but I think the journaling aspect needs to be private, and then you ask questions about that and see what her willingness is to share, especially if she's kind of more reserved, or doesn't want to quite go there with you yet because she's not sure how she's feeling about herself, let alone having you participate in it.
Yeah, I did the, like, what would you do, and then there's questions along the way, and we talked about the tools that you had in there along the way, but like the journaling exercises we didn't do together, and the approach was kind of like, let's go through the book together where we can, and I phrased them, I rephrased the questions to be something familiar.
Right.
To her.
Perfect.
Like the episode where the what would you do? Your girl, you have a friend that has troubles with a boy.
Right.
And she didn't kind of get it, so I switched and said, okay, Karen, your friend Karen did it, and I changed it around, and then that got our conversation. And then when we got done going through everything, it was. We just talked about what, now that we've been through it together, then she can take the book and work slowly at her own pace, through her own journaling, and skip the areas that she's not interested in. And
exactly. Yeah, that was a great way to go through it.
Was there anything for you that was particularly challenging as you worked on this book, that you found like that was as harder than what you thought it might be, or?
This can sound ridiculous. Actually, writing the book was a whole lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. The first nonfiction book I wrote, I literally wrote in like 3 weeks. I had it, literally. And I had minimal edits on it, so it was kind of like the dream book, because it came out super fast. It came out almost in perfect format. The editing was really quick, so I got this unrealistic expectation that most of my nonfiction would go that way, because I kind of live in this nonfiction world. It's what I do day in and day out when I do trainings, when I work with kids, that kind of thing. Book 2 didn't take much longer. It took a little bit longer, but not much. I had gone through a personal tragedy during the second book I wrote. My mom died literally the day that edits were due. Fortunately, after I turned in edits, otherwise that book still probably would not be done. So that one was kind of easy too. So when this one came down the pike, my normal process is I take a look at all the competitive titles, because I really want to make sure I'm doing something fresh and new. And I looked at what I promised my publishers I would accomplish in the book, and then sat down to start writing it, and it was like pulling teeth. And I had a new job, and it was a really demanding job, and so I had a lot less writing time. So the whole book actually was a true labor of love, and was slower to write, harder to write. I needed a lot more encouragement as I was going through, so I wouldn't abandon it, which is not normally like me. But it just kind of happened to hit at a time when I was kind of creatively not as fresh as I usually am. So the book itself was challenging. And then I have been living mother-daughter issues this year, which I've never had to really live before, but right on cue, my daughter hit her 16th birthday, and I'm now the spawn of the devil. So I spent a lot of time on that chapter.
Oh, I know
my soul on the page, So.
Well, so we're working moms against guilt. So are you? You're an author, but you also have a job, a full-time job.
I have a highly demanding job outside the home. As I said before, I work as an educational psychologist. I took a job of what's called a program specialist in my school district, and my typical day, I leave the house about 6:45 in the morning to take my daughter to school, and I get home probably 8 o'clock at night. Typical Monday through Friday. By the time I get off work and cart people, play taxi driver and taxi drive people to wherever they need to go, it's usually 8 o'clock Monday through Friday by the time I get home. So there's not a lot of time during the week to do much other than collapse on a couch watching Survivor or something else mind-numbing. And then on the weekend is when I get all my writing in.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, because I know you also write quite a bit of fiction too.
I do.
So
I'm taking this summer off. I'm really excited about this. I have just gone through these last couple of years of producing a whole lot of material in a really short amount of time, and it's with the new job. I kind of didn't plan that out very well together. So
you're taking a summer off of
because
right?
it all came to
I
you?
am. I am off normally because I work for a school district, so I'm off for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks in the summer, and I'm not going to write for a couple of months. Of course, I say that, and writing is like breathing, so I'm sure I'll probably write something, but I'm not intending to write. And I switched jobs back to my old job so that I could have more hours because I like writing and I like doing stuff like this. And eventually I want to move into that direction with my career, but not there yet.
Yeah, I know.
I
Much you might.
off in the summer. I was off in the summer, but when you write, isn't it like, okay, you did a whole bunch of stuff in a short amount of time, but did all of this just come to you quickly, or had you already planned out to do this?
That's hard. I'm actually a very fast writer. When I actually sit down and figure it out, I take a very long time to angst, and so my angst makes it feel like it's taking longer than it is. But my actual writing process, I'm actually a very fast writer. I edit relatively quickly. I purposefully draft really fast. I have to word vomit it out of my head because my inner editor's really, really vocal, and if I don't just dump it out of my head, it'll never, ever, ever get out of my head. So I have to just get it out as fast as I can, and then take my time on editing. I do plot, so I actually sit down and I plot out books, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. So that makes the process a little faster. But I'm not a strict plotter, so in my fiction in particular, I am telling the story of my characters, so I absolutely let my characters dictate where that's going to go. Every now and then the mean author has to come in because they've got some weird, wild idea that I'm like, yeah, sorry. But most of the time they get to tell their story, and I just try to stay out of the way and keep up.
So how would you describe your fiction? You write fiction for teens too, right?
I do. I write young adult fiction. It is dark fiction. So, which is a good thing. So, Transcend, which is my most recent book that came out, was inspired by Phantom of the Opera. I love that musical, love that storyline, and that actual book, the main character in that book, is before he was Phantom of the Opera. So when he is a teen, and I kind of recreated his backstory. So it's not the same as the original backstory in either the musical or in the original book. It's my version of it, and it was my favorite book to write. Hard as heck to write because it's called Transcend. Okay. In fact, I wonder if I don't. It's a psychological thriller. It is dark, but it is YA, but it's dark. And I don't believe in writing gore or really explicit scenes or anything like that. I don't think it's necessary creatively, but I do like making you a little scared, so it's a little scary.
I kind of want to go back to the working moms against guilt route. So, are there areas that you struggle with being a mom that works with a family, and what do you do to balance that?
Balance, funny you should use the word balance. That is my biggest issue. Whatever I'm doing, I tend to do 100% or 110%. So when I first had children, kind of made it a rule in my life when I made the decision to be a working mom, that when I was at work, I'd be at work. When I was at home, I'd be at home. And be really strict about those boundaries so that I could really be present for my family when I was home and really present for my employer when I was at work. What threw all that out of whack is the day I decided to write, because characters do not pay attention to that rule. They don't care. And ideas for books, the minute you kind of unleash that creative dragon, it really does not care where you are. It really doesn't understand that you're in the middle of a meeting and you should probably focus on the meeting. It's going to start screaming in your head. And so I had to learn kind of how to balance all over again. And quite honestly, I've had some periods in my life when I've been really, really bad at it. And feel like there have been times when my husband or my family have kind of paid the price for that. And so I've had to work through my own issues with guilt about that and kind of restoring balance. But I try to follow my own advice that's in the Girl Guide, and I'm very self-reflective. So if I see something in my life that feels kind of out of whack, I always take a step back and look at, okay, what have I done to contribute to this feeling? Where is this feeling coming from? And what can I do to kind of rectify it for myself? So
that's a good point, because I try to use the guilt feeling or the feeling bad as my red flag that I need to adjust in some way. That if I'm feeling guilty, then I must really need to adjust. I must be not giving enough quality time to my family, or things like that, and I just make a more conscious effort of it. I guess I appreciate having that feeling every now and then, so it does get my attention instead of just.
Well, and that's the point of it, I would say. I think guilt, anger, any of those more negative feelings, those are just little alarm bells. That's all they are. They're on purpose to get us to act in some way. That's why we have those. And so what I think human beings tend to do, especially moms, it's kind of how we're enculturated. We tend to feel those feelings of anger or guilt or negative feelings, and we suppress them and feel bad about them, and then it kind of feeds on itself, instead of looking at it and saying, oh, this is my trigger that I need to be, or my warning that I should make some change or take some action of some form or whatever. So I think it's really good that you do that. I think it's really important for all of us as women to do that and to set that example for our girls.
Is there also a danger, though, of just getting into like a negative loop of self-talk? For guilt sometimes to me can be self-perpetuating and misplaced, I think. It's like I take the guilt on myself when it's not my thing to feel guilty
when
about.
You shouldn't own it.
I think
that's another thing. I think women do that. I think we in the United States, in our culture, in a Western culture, we absolutely have kind of put this off on women, and women have bought into it lock, stock, and barrel. Not many guys treat guilt the same way that women do. They tend to walk the other way when they see it. They don't tend to own it. We tend to say, oh, look, guilt, come to me. It must be mine. And we take it all. And so I think it's really important to prevent negative self-talk. Now, negative self-talk actually is not action. That's being stagnant. That's being stuck in that endless loop. And if we treated, whether it's guilt or anger or any of those things, as a call to action, and we take action, then it prevents us from getting into that loop. So if I'm feeling guilty about my writing, I might sit down and make kind of a schedule for myself with regards to writing, so that then I can let it go, because now I have a schedule, I've taken some action, I don't need to feel guilty about it or think about it. If it's my family, it might be the same thing. I might call a family meeting and say, okay, mom hasn't been around, that's not cool, I feel like I'm kind of out of touch with you guys, fill me in, let's plan some, schedule time together, whatever. Whatever that plan is, that then becomes my action. Now I can release all the feelings.
You know what I find interesting? That I just heard a survey or a study that the breadwinner now, 57% of households have women as the breadwinner instead of men, which is a very big change from where we came from.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're in the majority of being the breadwinners. And yet the whole, environment that we work in and we live in hasn't quite caught up to that yet. I mean, and I hope things like this actually helps catch up.
I do too.
It still kind of feels like you have to be like this man and you can't show emotions and all of this. And I really, me personally, hope that all of us women that are hardworking women influence things in a way that the men can actually come up and speak about these things, because I think they're so quiet, and I know they feel some of the same feelings that we
absolutely
feel.
they do.
They just don't speak it. They're not allowed to talk that because they're supposed to be the breadwinner.
Well, and they're not allowed to talk about it because, again, it goes back to how we indoctrinate and how we kind of acculturate male and female roles within the Western culture. And so, funny you should say that, because, of course, I have a ton of mom friends who have boys, not girls. And what do you think the number one question is? When are you going to write, like, a boy guide? And the answer to that is I just haven't figured out how to do it yet, because obviously the format of the girl guide and kind of that kind of thing, that won't work with boys. It's not how a male brain thinks. It won't appeal to a male brain, and so I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do it yet. I'll probably, since I won't be writing this summer, but I'll still be thinking about writing because I don't know how to not do that. I'll probably have focus groups with boys to kind of get in their head a little bit, spend a little more time. Interestingly, the kids I work with in my school settings I have much higher number of boys than girls that I work with directly. So I think I could figure it out. I just haven't quite. I'm going to do something like a graphic novel. I just don't know what I'm going to do with it yet.
Well, Christine, because I know Susan has a son, and I think Angela, do you have a little boy too?
Yes, did you guys all hear him earlier?
He was pulling my hair when I was trying to talk.
Was he? I saw him.
Sorry.
I have 2 boys, but they're in their 20s now.
That's right. So, Christine, what are some challenges quickly that boys might be facing that, because we've been so girl focused, but what are some things that you see boys facing as
boys who have non-traditional interests are not allowed to explore that interest without suffering a pretty significant amount of ridicule and bullying in schools. So if you have a boy who is interested in the arts, there's a lot of negative connotations that are automatically made about those boys, regardless of what may or may not be true or the relevance of it. And so I think if we could get boys to appreciate that those who are not athletic, it does not mean they're weak. Those who are into the arts does not mean they're less masculine or interested in male things than anybody else, that it's all kind of irrelevant, would be huge thing if we could kind of teach that at a younger age so that they're a little bit more tolerant. The type of bullying that tends to go on with boys is more overt aggression, and there's huge problems in male culture with being able to handle aggression and frustration correctly. Girls tend to hurt themselves, boys tend to hurt others. And so it's a matter of learning how to work with this kind of huge waves of testosterone that happen around a certain age, as well as all of that conflict that just naturally happens at that age also, and kind of make that all gel so that they can learn to make different decisions about it. So there's a lot for boys to work on too.
You said something about girls hurting themselves, and I feel like there's this rise of more cases of girls coming out as cutting themselves.
Yeah.
Is it just that they're more vocal about it now? Has it always gone on, or do you think that
it's been around for a while? Cutting's been around for a while. I work with quite a few cutters throughout my career. Cutting is the same kind of psychological profile as eating disorders. So probably back when we were kids, we heard about bulimia and anorexia. Now it's cutting. It's this exact same kind of profile psychologically in terms of why kids choose to cut. Unfortunately, cutting has become a bit of a fad, so has eating disorders. So as fabulous as the internet is, you can also Google really destructive sites that have to do with how to cut better so you don't get caught, and how to engage in eating disorder behavior better so you don't get caught, and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's really important to kind of be aware that these things happen and go on, and kind of what it looks like and how kids tend to behave if they're engaging in self-harm behaviors. But yeah, cutting's rough.
When you were writing the book, were you keeping those kind of things in mind so that if they did work through the book, it could maybe help them in some areas?
Absolutely, it could. Absolutely. All of the foundational skills that are in the book will actually prevent some of those maladaptive behaviors later on. The idea is you go through, you develop some of these strong internalized skills and this resiliency, especially in the area of mastery. One of the areas I talk about in the book a lot is mastery. So feeling like you have some control over your environment, some say as to what happens in your world. You can develop that. The etiology or the psychological whatever behind cutting really has to do with control. It has to do with feeling a loss of autonomy in one's life, and so you cut as a way to regain control. And what you're specifically regaining control over is whatever pain is that you're feeling. And so by cutting, you then are in control of that pain. And so if you can learn a lot prior to that how to assert autonomy into your life, how to process through that pain so that you don't have to hold on to it, really having a better understanding of it, you should, at least in theory, circumvent the need to engage in that cutting behavior at all. I can tell you with my own children, I am certain the reason they've never kind of gone down that road or near that road for any of those kinds of behaviors is predominantly because of their resiliency. They're incredibly resilient kids, and there are things that have happened in their lives that certainly could have led them down a totally different path. But they didn't, thank goodness.
Where does that resiliency come from? Is that genetic? Is that
It's taught. Some of it's born, some of it you're just born with, but a lot of it is taught. And all of the skills that I encapsulate in the book is specifically to teach the foundational skills of resiliency and to really, really build it. One thing, when I've been teaching parenting classes probably for about 10 years, and one of the things I always teach parents is never do something for someone else that they're capable of doing for themselves, which includes your kids, and that includes your kids at a really young age. And that is one of the cornerstones to building resiliency. Because the message you give children when you do something for them that they can do, especially when they're younger, is that they can't and they won't be able to. And so you would never want to give that message.
Got it. You know the groups you did with the girls before you wrote this book?
Yeah, my focus groups. Love them.
You're going to do that with boys, but how long do you spend on your focus groups? Like how many months?
It depends. It kind of depends. When I do them live, I do them in an afternoon. I go to school sites, and I usually get a bunch of permission slips signed by parents, and then get them all in a room and give them a bunch of 3x5 cards, and we talk, and I ask them a bunch of questions, and they write it all down and whatever. When I do them online, it usually starts off as a questionnaire. So I would give parents the questionnaire to do with their kids, and they'd send them back, and then based on that, I'll pull a group together, and we'll do something like a Hangout. We'll do a Skype chat or something, and we'll get further information.
Got it.
Yeah. Focus groups are the single best thing ever. I actually do them with my fiction as well on certain things when I'm trying to figure out a new topic to write about, or if I come up with some bizarre idea and I really want to see if a teen will actually think it's nearly as cool as I think it is. I have a group of teen girls that I call my think tank. They're not just girls, they're girls and boys, but I call them my think tank. T cubed, they call themselves, and I'll just go ask them.
I love that idea.
It's awesome. It's the best thing ever. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. They come up with really good ideas. They're awesome. They're also part of my little street team. So when I have stuff going on, they always get to read the books first and that kind of thing.
Did you develop that group from like the girls that you were coming in contact with?
Again, my children are my laboratory, so it started with my oldest daughter, who is not a writer herself, but she is a reader, and she hangs out with a whole bunch of geeky girls, half of which are writers. So we do a little exchange. I will read their work and give them true, like, crit level feedback on their work, and they will hang out with me and talk me off a ledge and help me come up with titles or character names or plot ideas or whatever.
That's what I can't wait for about my daughter getting older. I want to kind of use her as a guinea pig, but I hope she'll let me.
Well, my children at this point don't always let me, but their friends do. And so I kind of get bonus points with my own kids because I'm kind of cool, because their friends think I'm cool. So I'm like,
keyword kinda.
Yeah, I know, right? Kind of cool. You should hear me after I've spent all day around middle schoolers and high schoolers. I talk just like them. It's horrible.
Oh, yeah.
The hazards of the job.
Well, we've got about 5 more minutes until 8, and do we want to wrap it up? I mean, do you guys have any kind of final questions for Christine, or any other?
I just want to say, Christine, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to review the book and interact with you. It's been an awesome experience.
Yay!
And even added, I liked that it gave me an excuse to have her talk to me.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
That's what I
we talk to each other, but it was just good mother-daughter time, and I just want to say
Good.
thank you for that opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm so glad you guys did it that way.
And we will put a link up when we kind of edit out all the fun technology talk at the beginning. And I think we're going to try to maybe do like a giveaway, have some people comment, see if we can give away a copy of the book. And I just want to say thank you, too. I've seen you on Facebook a few times, quite a bit, actually.
Sure.
So it's nice to chat with you and be able to read your book and share
I
it with my
agree.
daughter.
I agree.
Thanks
Thanks, you guys, very much.
Thanks so much.
I loved it.
Good.
Christine,
All right.
you have an
Buy
awesome
the book.
Just buy the book. It's the Girl Guide. The Girl
There you
Guide.
go. Here, I'll hold one up too.
Mine's on the table.
All right. Thanks,
All
guys.
right. Bye, ladies. Thank you very much for hosting me. Thank you.
Thank